Christmas is waiting for you. It'll never start without you, never start without you.
Hey guys, this is Future Banana here. Before we get into the video, I just wanted to let you know a few updates. Also, I am having my mascot Brina here model the hat that I show you how to make in this tutorial. Anyways, I just wanted to let you know that I have a Christmas special that I'm scripting and will film and have out before Christmas that I am currently trying to get out as soon as possible. And after that, my next main focus will be the next episode of LPS Falling into Fate, so you can look forward to those. Now, onto the tutorial on how to make an LPS winter hat. Hey guys, BananaCat123 here. Welcome to today's video, and today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to make an LPS winter themed hat. I recently found a way to be able to DIY an LPS winter hat, which I'm really happy about because I didn't have any before. So now I'm going to teach you guys how I made it in case you want to make it for yourself. Here's an overview of what the hat looks like. It has 2 ear holes for my mascot Brina's ears, and it has a cute little butterfly type pattern on the top with a cyan type color rim around it and a white color at the top. It can also go further down on her face and show her ears more, although it kind of covers her eyes, which is why I keep it up here. Anyways, let's get into what supplies you'll need for this tutorial. The first thing that you will need is a needle and thread, and the thread can be any color of your choice. This tutorial does involve sewing, and if you do not know how to sew or are too young to do so, you should ask a parent or a guardian for help. The next thing you'll need is a pair of scissors. The next thing you will need is a sock. I'm just going to use this old gray sock that I no longer have a match to. The last thing you'll need is the LPS that you want to model the hat. The first thing that I'm going to do is take my scissors and trim along the outer rim of the sock. So I'm going to cut right here along and make a line. When you are done cutting, you should have a piece of the sock that looks like this. The next thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to pull it open, and you're going to want to cut a line down the middle. You should now have a piece that looks like this. If you notice that the edges of your sock are coming apart, you can pause and apply clear nail polish to whatever edges are coming apart, let it dry, and then that should prevent the edges or the material of the sock from fraying and your hat coming apart. The next thing you're going to do is cut another straight line through the middle so that you have 2 pieces of the sock. When you are done, you should be left with not 1, but 2 different pieces of the sock. Try and make sure that they are the same size and you make sure that they're even before you cut. Take the pieces of your sock and make sure that this part, which is already sewn, which is going to be the rim of your hat, is facing downward. So you don't want the part of the hat that has the rim to be facing upward. Once you make sure that both of them are facing downward, flip them upside down so that the back part of the sock is facing upward. Once you have done that, you're going to take your needle and thread, and you're going to take them and make sure that they are evenly together and they're still facing inside out, but the rim of the hat is still facing downward, and you're going to sew right along this to make a seam where the 2 socks should meet together. I'm going to quickly sew that part of the hat and then show you. But before I go do that, make sure that you are only sewing up to the part of the rim. Do not sew all the way up the hat because that will make your hat too big to fit your LPS. Just make sure that you are sewing to the top of the rim. It will make more sense once I show you the finished seam. So I just finished sewing the seam. I haven't yet cut off the excess needle and thread, but when I said not to sew the entire seam, now you can see what I mean. I just sewed around the rim area. Up here is still not completely sewn. The reasoning for that is because you're later on going to fold in these parts and sew them so that it makes an ear hole so that your ears can poke out of the hat that you're making for your LPS. Now that you have the first seam done, you're going to want to bring in the LPS that will be wearing the hat, and then with the outer part facing forward, you're going to want to wrap it around the head of your LPS to measure how long you need the hat to be. So I want my hat to come down to about here on my LPS, meaning I'm going to cut off the excess fabric after about here because that's how big my Great Dane's head is. Now that I've cut off the excess, you can see that my hat is about the right length I need for my Great Dane's head. Now, with the front part of the hat facing forward, turn the hat inside out and fold it and so it makes another side of the hat. Now you're going to sew from here to here, but on the opposite side of the hat, so only the rim makes another seam. When you are done sewing both of the seams, your hat should look a little something like this. You should have two seams that cover the rim of the hat but don't completely stitch the entire seam or the upper part of the fabric. You should be able to turn it inside out and see the foundation of your hat so far. As you can see, I have the outer rim of my hat done, and I just need to sew the top and make holes for the ears to poke through in the top of the hat. The way that I make ear holes into the hat is I start by flipping it back so it's inside out again, and then I take the outer corner of the seam and I sew it onto the rim of the hat, so I make a seam right here. I do the same thing, but on the other side. I take the corner and make a seam and fold it down onto the rim. That way, when you sew the top of the hat, it leaves a hole where the ear can poke through, but also makes a clean, nice area around the hole for the ear to poke through. It'll make more sense once I show you how I do it. So I'm taking my first seam, I'm folding it down, and then I'm going to sew along this edge right here. I'm not going to poke all the way through the hole so you can see the seam from the outer edge of the hat. I'm just going to use the little embroidered bit here to loop in and out to sew through to be able to seal it down. So as you can see, I finished sewing down this corner of the hat to complete the seam. That way, when you turn it inside out, you should have a diagonal facing downward type shape, and once you do that to the other side, it will form the hole for the ear to poke through. So once again, I'm going to turn the hat inside out, and now I am going to take this corner directly across from the one that I just sewed down, and I'm going to fold it over, and this time I'm going to sew it so the seam is right here on this side, and both hold down to make the hole. So after you are done finishing sewing on both corners down to the hat, make sure that you are not cutting off the extra thread yet, because as you can see, when we turn it inside out, so it's facing the right way, we have two little seams, and we're going to start sewing up here, and so it makes a little hole around the ears. I will show you on the Great Dane here. So this is how our hat is looking so far. You want to leave the hole around the ears and start sewing here so that you can fill in the gap between the two ears. So I'm going to flip it inside out so none of my seams will show when I sew it. I am going to start sewing along the top here, but I'm going to not sew all the way down the seam to here because we still need to sew down these corners so we have the other ear hole as well. So I'm going to sew along the top until about here. I have just finished sewing along the top seam of the hat, and if I flip it inside out, you can start to see that it's coming together. This half obviously still isn't done and needs to be sewn. However, I can model the right side of it, which is now complete. As you can see, we have the side sewn and it fits on the Great Dane's head, and as soon as we get this side of the hat done, we will have a completed hat. So I still have some thread left over, so I still have yet to actually cut it, but I am now going to sew down the edge of the flaps by making a seam here and then flipping it to the other side, bending it down and making another seam here. So I finished sewing the last of the seams and cutting off any extra thread. This is what it looks like inside out, and this is what it looks like after I flip it the right way. Now I'll model what the final winter hat looks like on our Great Dane here. So this is what the final winter hat looks like. Here is the back of it. And I hope that this tutorial was helpful to you guys and was able to help you make a winter hat for your LPS. And I'm really glad if it was able to help you out. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!